The utter destruction of the Russian tank fleet in Ukraine is not merely a result of intense combat. It is the inevitable conclusion of a 50-year-old engineering gamble that has failed catastrophically in the face of modern warfare. For decades, the Soviet and subsequently Russian military doctrine prioritized a specific design philosophy. Tanks should be small, low-profile, lighter than their Western counterparts, and manned by a crew of 3 rather than 4. To achieve this, engineers removed the human loader and installed an electromechanical autoloader system. In the T-72, T-80, and T-90 series, the very backbone of the Russian army, this autoloader sits directly in 2025. The battlefield has evolved into a hyper-lethal environment dominated by first-person view FPV drones and top-attack munitions like the Javelin and NLAW. When a shaped charge from a drone, which might cost as little as $500, strikes the relatively thin top armor of AT-9OM, the jet of superplastic metal penetrates the hull and instantly ignites the exposed propellant charges in the carousel. The physics of the resulting explosion are horrifying and absolute. The pressure builds up in milliseconds, seeking the path of least resistance, which is the turret ring. The force is so immense that it shears the 12-ton turret off the hull and launches it hundreds of feet into the air, instantly incinerating the crew. This is not a rare anomaly, it is a systemic vulnerability that no amount of cope cages or explosive reactive armor era can fully mitigate. We have seen the supposedly invincible T-90M Proryev, Russia's most advanced operational tank, equipped with thermal sights and the Nakhidka radar-absorbent camouflage, falling victim to this exact flaw. The psychological impact of this on Russian tankers cannot be overstated. They know they are driving mobile coffins. The loss of over 3,000 tanks, confirmed by visual evidence, signifies the complete erasure of Russia's modern armored capability. The elite tank armies that were trained for a thrust toward the English Channel have been decimated in the mud of the Donbas. This attrition has forced a degradation in quality that is shocking to military observers. We are no longer seeing the disciplined armored spearheads of 2022. We are seeing isolated, terrified crews operating vehicles that were designed for a different era, being hunted by swarms of drones that they cannot see and cannot shoot down. The vulnerability of the Russian tank design has fundamentally altered the geometry of the battlefield, turning what was once the king of battle into a primary target that has a survival time measured in minutes once it is detected. The failure is total. It is a failure of design, a failure of adaptation, and a failure to protect the most valuable asset, the trained crew. As the burning hulls of T-72s litter the front lines, a second, perhaps even more devastating crisis has crippled the Russian war machine: the complete collapse of its logistical independence and the disastrous reliance on North Korean ammunition. Russia, once the undisputed industrial superpower of artillery warfare, has burned through its Soviet-era stockpiles at an unsustainable rate. The shell hunger of 2024 forced the Kremlin to go hat-in-hand to Pyongyang, securing millions of artillery shells and tank rounds to keep their guns firing. However, this lifeline has turned into a curse. Reports from the front lines in late 2025 indicate a catastrophic failure rate with these imported munitions. The North Korean manufacturing standards are decades behind modern requirements. We are seeing widespread reports of inconsistent powder loads, where one shell might fly 10 kilometers and the next might fly 15, making precision targeting impossible. Worse, the dud rate is estimated to be incredibly high, meaning a significant percentage of shells simply do not explode upon impact. But the most terrifying issue for Russian crews is the degradation of the propellant itself. Old, poorly stored, or chemically unstable propellant can cause unpredictable pressure spikes inside the gun breech. There have been numerous documented incidents of catastrophic barrel bursts, where the shell detonates inside the gun or the pressure blows the breech block apart, destroying the artillery piece or tank and killing the crew instantly. A tank crew that cannot trust its own ammunition is combat ineffective. They hesitate to fire, they fire from unsafe distances, or they simply abandon their equipment. The sanctions regime, while slow to bite, has now severed the supply of critical high-tech components. Ball bearings, essential for the turret rotation mechanisms and engine transmissions, are in critically short supply. French-made Thales thermal optics, which gave earlier Russian tanks a hunter-killer advantage, are gone, replaced by inferior Chinese or domestic substitutes that offer poor resolution and shorter range. To plug the gaps, Russia is emptying the vast open-air storage depots in Siberia. Satellite imagery reveals that the massive fields of stored tanks, the strategic reserve of the Soviet Union, are nearly empty. The vehicles that remain are rusted hulks stripped of copper wiring and optics by looters decades ago. Russian repair plans are trying to refurbish these T-62s and T-55s, tanks that saw service in the 1950s and 60s. These Frankenstein tanks are being sent to the front without modern radios, without active protection systems, and often with engines that have exceeded their service life. This isn't a modern army resupplying. This is a desperate scavenging operation. The reliance on North Korea and the reactivation of museum peace tanks is the clearest signal yet that Russia's domestic military-industrial complex has failed to meet the demands of a long war. The combination of catastrophic tank losses and the ammunition crisis has forced a humiliating evolution in Russian tactics, resulting in the emergence of the bizarre and desperate turtle tank, enabled to defend against a swarm of FPV drones. Russian field workshops have begun welding massive superstructures made of scrap metal, roofing sheets, and bed frames over their remaining tanks. These grotesque modifications make the tank look like a moving barn or a giant tortoise. While this shell offers some standoff protection against small-shaped charges, it renders the tank tactically useless. The turret cannot rotate more than a few degrees. The driver's visibility is reduced to a narrow slit, and the extra weight strains the already exhausted engine and transmission. These are not breakthrough vehicles. They are acts of desperation, designed simply to survive the drive from the staging area to the front line to deliver supplies or drop off infantry before retreating. This shift signifies the end of the Russian doctrine of deep battle. Russia no longer possesses the capability to execute large-scale mechanized maneuvers to encircle enemy forces. Instead, the strategy has devolved into meat assaults, human wave attacks supported by artillery, where the lives of mobilized soldiers are cheaper than the armored vehicles they accompany. The commanders know that any tank sent into the open will be swarmed and destroyed, so they hold the armor back or use it as indirect artillery, further reducing its effectiveness. The economic attrition of this strategy is fatal. Russia is trading distinct, irreplaceable assets, modern tanks and trained crews, for mere meters of ground. Every T-9OM lost is a loss of millions of dollars and months of production time, while the Ukrainian drone that destroys it costs less than a smartphone. This cost asymmetry is bleeding the Russian economy dry. By late 2025, the Russian army is effectively undergoing demechanization. They are becoming an infantry-heavy force with limited mobility, relying on civilian trucks, Chinese golf carts, and motorcycles to move troops because the armored personnel carriers APCs and infantry fighting vehicles IFVs have been decimated alongside the tanks. The strategic outlook is grim. Once the last viable holes are pulled from the Siberian boneyards and the last crates of questionable North Korean ammo are fired, there is no backup plan. The Soviet legacy is finite, and it is almost gone. What we are witnessing is the slow, grinding death of a military superpower's conventional capabilities. The Russian army that emerges from this war, whenever it ends, will be a shadow of its former self, technologically set back by 30 years and stripped of the armored fist that once threatened all of Europe. The era of the Russian tank armada is over, buried in the crater pock fields of Ukraine.